Hi everyone, and welcome to this Noodle tutorial with me, Richard Osborne, where today we're going to create a task list app. And so this project was started by my lovely partner, Carolina, who has done the PDF guide that we're going to be reading through today. And she also used, and another person who deserves credit, Johan from the Noodle team, or from the Noodle team, was the original maker of the task list app tutorial. We've tried to stay as true as possible to what Johan did back in the days because it was a really nice, simple tutorial and a great way to get started with Noodle. And but the problem is that editor that he was using back in those days is not available anymore. So now we're on the open source editor, which you can see in front of you here. I'm currently on version 1.0.1. You might be on a later version, I hope. And we're going to assume that you've read everything on being able to download and open the editor, whether you're on Windows or Mac, so you can download the binary that's available to install Noodle, or if you're on Linux, hopefully there's a binary available for Linux at the time of watching this video, but if not, you can build from the GitHub repo. The open source repository can be built from source in Linux. So let's just assume you've got this far. You're on the welcome screen of the editor, and we're going to start following the tutorial. So I'm going to follow the tutorial step by step, and I'm going to do everything that's in the tutorial, and I can't help myself from ranting and talking too much. So I'm going to try to resist, but I will give comments on some things that I've seen in the tutorial that I think it's worth adding some color to, or some extra information about what's happening. And some of the things I might talk about might be things that have already been solved with Noodle in later versions, so apologies if I complain about a bug that's actually not there anymore. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is create a new project, step one. So we go into our Noodle editor and we click on Create Project in the dashboard. We have several basic templates that we can use, not really templates, just kind of sidebar examples. They're fun to experiment with, and you can use the Task Manager app to learn a little bit about how Noodle works. But we're just going to start from scratch and try to learn really from the basics how Noodle works. So we'll go hello world, we give it project name, so we're going to call it the to-do list tutorial app. Now we're going to select a location because we're building everything in Noodle locally. So we have to select a local location where we're going to put the project. So I'm going to choose in my documents the Noodle projects, and I'm going to create, I'm just going to put it in here, I think. Yes. So we're going to open that Noodle projects folder. So I have a Noodle projects folder where I put all my projects. It's a good place to keep them safe. I'm on Mac, so this folder is cloud backed up. So it means that all my project folders are backed up. Later on, you'll see how it's a good idea to push your projects to GitHub. It means that they're backed up in GitHub forever. They'll be safe forever. You can never accidentally delete them. But for now, let's just put it into somewhere safe on the local computer. And here we go. Let's maximize this a little bit. Make it look a bit easier for you guys to see. That's better. And now let's go ahead with the next step of creating a header. So we're on the start page. We're on the app page. So just a quick explanation. This is a React framework. React is a coding framework based on JavaScript that makes single page apps. Is well known for making single page apps. Let's put it that way. And the way that Noodle uses it is in the spirit of single page apps. So although it seems like there's a lot of pages, there's a /login page and a /profile page, there's actually just one page physically on the machine that's serving the files, which is index.html. And so it's kind of routing the user to all the different pages that they want to go to, but it's not giving them a new HTML file with each page. It's just kind of pretending that it's going to different pages by showing different things on the screen and making the route in the URL a bit different every time. So that's just to explain why you have these two elements at the very beginning, app and start page. It's because you have an app level of an app component That's the kind of index.html file. And then in that app component, which cannot be removed, we have a page router, and the page router sends the user to the start page as the default page, for example. So I can click on it here, or I can click on it up here in the components drawer. Start page, it takes me to this page. So this app, you don't ever really see the app level. It's really the pages from the router that you see. So we see the start page here, and this hello world text is what we're seeing here. If I hover over it, it goes blue and shows me that that's the element that's on the page. So I'm going to click on the start page component, which I've done. I'm going to delete the text node. So I click on it and either use the bin up here to delete it, or just use delete or backspace on your keyboard. It also deletes it. And now we're going to add a group node to the page node. So the group node is going to be like a div if you're into HTML, or a group if you like Bubble, or a container if you like another kind of low-code builder. It's just a division of the page that helps you to put elements in a certain order and in groupings. So we're going to right click on the page element, and we're in the node picker, where we can either look for the element we want. For example, in UI elements, we have group, which is what we're looking for. That nice handy explanation of what a group is, and documentation in GitHub about what the group does, coming from the original Noodle team who built the documentation. Or we can just search group, and it'll give us the element that we want. Click on it, and it automatically appears with a line between page and group. That line means that this is a child, because it's going down and in. So this nested level, the fact that it's indented a bit from the left, means that it's a child of this element. So, and it's a page always has children. There's no siblings of a page. So we also could have done it another way, which was, if I just take this out, we could have just clicked on the canvas somewhere and also selected group, and then it would have put a group detached from the page, kind of floating here. It says the node is detached. That's sometimes useful if you just want to be able to slot something in somewhere specific, or you're maybe building a component or something. But here, if we have that detached and we need to attach it, we click and drag it and put it under the page. And as soon as it gets overlapping, you can see a little white line appear, and the white line indicates where it's going to go. We can drop it there, and then that's it in this position. So we've added our group node. When we have added that, we're going to use the edit button up at the top left, select it and use the edit button, and then type in header as the name of this node. We could have also double clicked on the text. That can also permit you to change it. And why to do this is because as a developer and building your own app, you're going, especially if you're working in a team, but also if you're working alone, you're going to want to have things labeled, because labeling every element is going to help you to understand what they do when you come back to it 4 weeks later and it's all done and you haven't touched it for a while and you've forgotten what everything does. And it's really, really important to have things labeled. So I recommend you label everything if possible, all the nodes. It might be a pain, but it only takes a few seconds and it will save you a lot of pain later, instead of just seeing like group text, group text, group text, group text, and you have to think about, like, go through the, highlighting things to see, okay, what group is that again? Okay, it's this one in the preview. So yeah, I would say label things is a very strong piece of advice I could give there. So we're going to change the parameters of the header, because at the moment we can't see it because it's on the page, but it's a flat 0 pixel height, 0 pixel width, I guess, or 100% width, 100% height, full of nothing kind of group. So there's nothing in there. So we're going to have to set some dimensions at least to get it started. We're going to click on the header group and we're going to click on explicit width and content height. That is a CSS type thing. That means the group will stay at 100% of the width of its container, which is the page. So it will be 100% width of the page. And the content height means that if you put stuff in there, it'll only be as high as the highest thing that you put in there, which is obviously very good for a header. We're going to add a background color that is down here. So background color, we click on the text, it'll show you your kind of style drawer, right? If you click on the actual color bit itself, it's going to show you a color wheel or color selector. So that can be useful if you want to put in your own custom colors. But obviously the best if you're making an app is to have the colors saved in style here. So I'll talk at one point later about how to create colors. But right now we can just use the colors that are provided with the template. So let's use primary subtle as a background color. Still nothing appearing because it's not there yet. There's nothing inside it. So it's a 0 pixel height because there's nothing in there. So the highest thing is 0 pixels. The highest thing is nothing. So we've done our background color, and now we're going to do some text nodes. So this will finally show us where the group actually is. So we can click on header group, right click, sorry, on header group, and then click on type in text, or go looking in the basic elements for text. And there we finally see something. So we're going to Control C and Control V on the text. It's going to copy and paste and create us another text. And then we're going to do just Control V again if you want. You don't have to Control C. And put that under. This is where the dragging thing becomes important. Putting it under here. Not here. Hang on. Not here. Here. Not here. Here. Because if you put it here, it's going to become a sibling of the group header. And so it'll go outside the group header. If you put it in, then it becomes a child of the group header and a sibling of the text nodes. These are all siblings. So this is just important. I think it's important terms to know, just to keep yourself right and to know how this whole thing works, and just to keep a little bit of the spirit of traditional coding in what you're doing. We're not trying to run away from coding. We're trying to facilitate coding a website with no code principles. But we shouldn't forget best practices that have existed for decades already. So we've added our 3 text nodes, and we're going to change the layout direction of the header to horizontal so that we can see it a bit better. So we go into header, we go to horizontal. So now the text nodes are spread out horizontally as opposed to being stacked vertically. Although they're stacked vertically here, because they always are in this tree format of how we see the objects on the page. Now the header is spread out horizontally. They're going to be physically on the page spread out next to each other horizontally. Now there's a bug with the current version 1.0.1. I hope it's already been solved in your version. When you place a text node and it's automatically explicit width and text height, it has this bug where it pushes anything that's next to it in a horizontal group out of the group. So essentially it takes up 100% width of the group, regardless or if there are any other elements in there. So one way around this bug, if you still have it, is to click on any other dimension and then click back into explicit width and height. And do that for all of them. This one. And so there you go. You can see that that's what it should have looked like when they were first placed on the page, is that they automatically respect that, yeah, okay, I have 100% width, but I can't take up 100% of the parent because I have siblings. And so I have to take up 100 divided by whatever number of siblings there are. So 3, I can take up 33.333% of the header group. So that's not what we're doing here. The next step is we're going to choose text width and height. So really handy dimension for when you just want the text to be exactly the width of the text on one line and exactly the height of the text on its one line. It can be maybe not so useful when you have text that needs to be on multiple lines in a responsive way. You might want it to have it explicit width, then it means it only goes to 100% of its parent, and it will go to a new line if the text is getting too long. But for our purposes, we're just making titles of our header, so we know that the text is fixed, so we can make it text width and height. We're going to change the padding of the header so that it is not just all squished up like that. So I'm going to click on header, and we're going to add margin and padding, but not margin. We're only adding padding. So this is another CSS thing. Margin is what's outside the group. So if I add 20 up here, it's going to push it down by 20 pixels. I can just remove that by clicking on this reset the default button. Now we're making this 0. Oops. But we want to add margin. Margin is the gap between the edge of the element and what's inside the element. So we're going to add 20 everywhere. One day, somebody is going to update the editor, and there's going to be a button that either lets you tab through these or that just lets you add 20 everywhere all at once, because it is such a pain having to click and do 20 and then click out and click in and do 20 and click out and click in. And yeah, I hate it. And sometimes when you click it and you drag it, it like changes, which is kind of a cool feature, I suppose, when you click on the number and drag it. But I don't know. It just, I make more mistakes with it than I actually use it. So I'm not going to use that. So we've changed the padding, and we're going to set the layout of the header back to vertical, because why not? And we need it to be vertical for the next thing that we're going to do, but at least now we know that the texts are all in the right dimension. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is style our text nodes, and we'll start to see an app taking shape. So the first text node, we're going to rename it logo. We're going to align it to the right. So because they're stacked on top of each other, aligning it to the right, you can see means that it's aligned to the right, but its siblings remain aligned to the left because they have the default alignment, which is left, although you don't see it here. And we're going to change the style. We're going to change this to Roboto Medium. So this is how you change the fonts directly without using a text style. In the long term or medium term, you should be using text styles. So say this is a title large, then you should be clicking here and changing the style of Roboto Medium and etc. here, and then choosing title large as a style. But this is, you know, us making something custom just to be quick and easy and to learn how it works. So we can change manually here, and it doesn't really have any impact on the rendering side of the website or the web app. But it just means that you would have a much easier time if, for example, there's body text. Well, body text, you don't want to have to style it manually every time that you do it. So why not just use a text style called body medium, for example, that would help you. But anyway, we're going to style this manually. Roboto medium, 16 is already done, and primary dark as a color. And now you can see the text has changed. And we're going to make this our logo text. So we're going to change the text field to my task list. So there you go. The logo is there, my task list. So it's just a text, but it functions as a logo. Don't waste anything. And we're going to call the second text node number of tasks left. So we're going to put the actual number of tasks that are in the list. And we're going to style that in a very specific style, which is Roboto bold. The font size is the gigantesque 148. My God. And then the color is going to be primary dark. Oh, and there's also a line spacing to respect as well, to make it a bit, nope. Not letter spacing, line spacing. It makes it a bit tighter so there's no gap between the text and the text up here and the text down here because it's so big. We need that to happen. And so we'll just choose an arbitrary number so it doesn't say text, because we're going to fill it in later with our own number. It's going to come from the list that we're going to make, but you'll see that later. So we're going to call the third text node left to do. You can really see that it's starting to take shape. I can read it from top to bottom and understand what this group of objects actually does because I've labeled it. So please label the things that you're making. So we're going to choose a font family. We're going to choose Roboto medium. We're going to choose 20 pixels, and we're going to choose primary dark. And then the text is going to be, oops, tasks left to do. Nice, it's taken shape. Oh, and with a letter spacing of 0.5 pixels. Okay, looks nice. Time to make it sticky, number 5. So we are going to, when we scroll on the page, we want that this header stays where it is, doesn't scroll out of the view of the user. So we're going to click on header, and we're going to change the position of the header to sticky. So that means that it will stick to the top of the page when the page is scrolled down. All right, on to step 6. We now want to make this header into a component. Now this step cannot be understated how important it is to make components. You should componentize everything. Everything should be a component in your app. So the header should be a component. The cells of repeaters are going to be a component. Everything is going to be a component. So this is how React works. It's one of the biggest advantages of React. It is that because it's a one-page app, you could end up having way too many components on the page. So you wouldn't be able to manage it anymore. The canvas would become unmanageable. You wouldn't be able to connect things anymore. And components also help you to debug things. So you can find out more easily where something is going wrong when it's only going wrong in one place and not 5 different copies of the same thing. The best practice of coding is always try to make the minimum amount of code possible, to try to make the most of your code reusable as you can. And also just that you're going to be using these components in multiple places. Well, then it's way better to copy paste one component in multiple places than copy pasting a group. And then if you want to change the logo color, then you have to change the logo color in 5 different places because you've got 5 different pages all with the same header. Doesn't make sense. Best is if you make it a component, then you change the component once and it's changed in all 5 places. So you really need to make as much componentization as possible in your apps. So there are 2 ways to do it. The first way, the sort of easiest way or the most manual way, is to go to your group components, your component picker. Click on Start Page. Click on Visual Component. Give the component a name. No, sorry, don't click on Start Page. That's not what it says in the tutorial. You can click on Start Page and it will create you a header component as a sub component of Start Page. It doesn't change anything about the actual app. It just is the organization of your components. This is a really important thing to remember about Noodle. The components and sheets are only organizational units. So if you have something under Start Page, it doesn't mean it's part of Start Page. You could have an element under Start Page that you don't even use in Start Page. It's just the way you want to organize it. So that's just an organizational unit. What is in the actual page itself in the hierarchy is always what's displayed in the canvas. But we don't want to do that because that's not what it says in the tutorial. We're going to click on the plus next to components, and there we're going to create a visual component. You can also create folders if you want to organize things into folders, and we'll see about logical components later, and creating new pages, that's for later. So this is called header. We're going to delete the initial group in here because we're not creating a new one from scratch. We actually have one already, so we can delete that. Go back to our start page, select all of the components here. And we're going to Control X or whatever it is, Command X on your keyboard to cut them. And we're going to go into header and we're going to Control V or Command V to paste them. And now we have the same elements inside a unique component. So there's nothing on the start page anymore. We're going to go back to the start page and drag the header onto the page and then move it, or directly drag it onto the element where you want it to become a child, and our header is back. So it's like nothing changed, but now we have a header component, not 4 different elements. And so it's much easier to manage, and we can put this header on every page and it will always stay the same on every page. Another way we could have done this would have been to take our text elements and group elements, just as an example, and drag select them. There's a little button here, extract a component, or you can right click and do extract a component. That will also create a component. It'll be called extracted component, which is a bit of a pain. Then you have to go to the components menu, find it. It'll automatically be a subcomponent of the parent component where you were making this extracted component. You'll have to go to the 3 dots and click on rename and then make that header. There it is. And when you go in there, it's the same thing. You have the group and text already in there. So it's a really, really useful method when you have a lot of elements and you want to just, instead of having to copy paste them in, you want to just make them into a component already and then rename that component. It can be very, very useful. Sometimes it's not useful. It just depends on how much you want to custom build the component that you're making by maybe copy pasting things from different places or specific things from the page. You don't want to take everything, but maybe just some specific things. But in general, it's easier to do the extract a component right-click option, especially because when you come to make connections between these elements to other elements or to logic, you're going to want to do that extract to preserve the connections that are on the page and have the connections become part of the component's connections. You don't need to know about that yet, but it's really, really useful to do that later when you already have existing connections, rather than copy pasting and then manually defining the inputs and outputs of the component, manually connecting them up, and then manually coming back to the parent component and manually connecting your component to where it's supposed to go. Some cases that might be the best way, but in most cases it's going to be extracting it to a component. One of the mentions here is that instead of dragging it in here, if, for example, my organization has become quite complex and I don't want to have to go looking through all the components and sheets to find the element I want, I can also right click and type in the name that I gave, which is header. Oh, I better delete that one. Don't need it anymore. So I can right click and go type in the name of the component. It's in the project components folder here, project components. But later on, I might just want to type it in because there's going to be so many components that you're not going to be able to scroll through that list. So there you can just click it like it was any other element. And this is a really important lesson as well about how your Noodle project, what you have in the basic kind of elements folder, you're going to be adding your own stuff to that. So where there's an input, you might not even use this input anymore. You might make your own input as a component, and then you always use the project components folder text input instead of the one that Noodle has provided for you. So part of the beauty of noodling is being able to create your own components with your own flavor and then putting them where you want in your project. So header, we can put that in the same way and it comes up exactly the same. Now it's time to build a task item. It's exciting. So let's give us a bit more space so we can actually see it, I guess. Okay, so we're going to click on the start page component, which we're in already. We're going to add a new group under page. We can't add a new group under header because it doesn't have any children. You could if you gave it a component children node, but that's for much later. Let's click on page and type in group. And now we have a sibling called group. And we're going to call this content group. We're going to add 20 padding. To every side. And then we're going to add another group called task item underneath this one. Add a new child. We're going to change the dimensions to explicit width and content height. And there we go. So now we've added a content group. Oh, sorry, did I forget to rename something there? Call it task item. Yeah, oops, my goodness. I nearly didn't label something. I'm ashamed. Okay, we're going to add a checkbox and a button to this. So let's use the node picker to get ourselves a checkbox. And a button. We're going to change the layout of task item to horizontal so they're next to each other. We're going to change the button's alignment to right so that it gets the heck away from the checkbox. It's way too close. And as you can see, the checkbox is not vertically centered. That's because if you look, the group is as high as the highest element, which is the label. The checkbox by default is always top left. Every element is top left alignment. And so because it's top and not center, it's not centered. So we want to have that center aligned. And then we're going to add some dummy text to the checkbox, which is label. So So we're going to add that in the label column, and we're going to say do laundry. I don't think so. We're going to say feed the cat, because everything in apps should have something to do with cats when you're testing. That's another best practice. Make all your dummy data relevant to cats. It's a really official developer thing that everybody does, I promise you. So we will, or we can make it task 1, I guess that's okay as well. And our button just says label at the moment, that's okay, I guess. We don't have anything in there about that. Yeah, we'll get there. Okay, step 9. While checkbox is selected, we're going to go to, we're going to go to neutral state to checked. So we want to say what is going to be different about this checkbox if the state of the checkbox becomes checked. So like you maybe know from like buttons that the hover state is when the mouse is over the button, that it might turn a bit more transparent, or the shadow might get bigger or something like that. So here the checkbox has a state called checked. So we're going to check that out. And we're going to go down to edit the text style under label. And we're going to say when it's checked, we want to make it light gray, like this one. It's not bad, it's pretty light. And that's okay, perfect. So let's have a look and see what that looks like. So neutral state is black, checked state, oh, did that not work? Style. Oh, okay, we have to we have to check it, don't we? Hey, nice. So yeah, when it's checked, it's gray. Looks good to me. So now we're going to make that button do something as well. We're going to style it as a delete button. So let's go to our button. And we're going to uncheck enable label, because we don't want it to have a word. We want it to have just an icon. We're going to check enable icon, so that the button now has an icon instead of text. And we're going to change the icon source to, I think it's not delete. Oh, it is delete. Sometimes it's trash, sometimes delete. This is Google Material icons. So if you're ever missing or you ever don't know what to search for, go to the Google Materials icon website, and they have a very good search engine that you can type in whatever, like, you know, task, and it'll come up with any icon that sort of is related or is tagged with something like task. And then you'll get the name of the icon, and then you'll be able to find it more easily in the icon picker. Everybody calls it something different. So Google calls this delete, Font Awesome calls it trash, Feather Icons calls it something else. So yeah, let's put a little trash can on there. We're going to change the icon color to light gray and the background color to transparent. So we'll change the icon color to, what was the gray that we used in the text there? Checkbox, checked. Text style was gray 400, maybe 500 might be better, gray 500. So let's make this one gray 500. Okay, and then we need to change the background style to transparent, which is a default. So now we have a nice little gray button, which looks pretty cool. Okay, now step 11, we're going to style the button's hover state. So when we select button, I'm going to choose in the states, the hover state. And now we're going to choose a different icon color and background color, for example, light gray and black. So let's make the background color light gray, 500. And the icon color, black. Let's try it and see what it looks like. Yeah, it's okay. Maybe I would have made it white. I'm terrible with styling. Yeah, for mine, I'll make it white. You can make yours black if you like it better. Just like the contrast, you know, like the colors switch places. It's pretty cool. So that's good. And we tested in the preview window as we just did. That's great. Step 12 is going to be creating a list item component. So we're going to make the task item group. Now that we've styled it and got it on the page, this is really important when you're going to be working with repeaters, because when you work with a repeater, you're not going to see an item from the repeater unless you load some dummy data into it. So you could be building the item that the repeater is going to repeat, but you don't see it until you load dummy data. So this way you can make what you want to be inside your repeater first, then turn it into a component, then add your repeater, and you know what it's going to look like. So we're going to take task component, and we could add a task item component in the left panel and do the same things we did last time, but I'm going to do the faster way, as I showed you before, which is to drag select all of the items and click on the extracted component button, and then go into the left menu, start page, extracted component, and rename it to task item. So it's still there, don't worry. And now we can see task item here. So we don't need to do that bit. We're going to, we can drag several. Now we have to do several. So we're going to drag several task item components into the start page, into the component group as children. So we can put them not here, but here. We could also just copy paste as usual, Control C, Control V. Oops. And now we have 3 task items. Feed the cat, feed the cat, feed the cat. But at least you can see what it's going to look like when it's inside the repeater, right? So this is really good just to get you an idea of what the page is going to look like when there's 3 items or more items. Do I need to cut the content group at a certain height so that it scrolls? These kind of things. Now we can add scrolling to the task item list, as we were just talking about. Let's add a few more just in case, because we want them to overflow. So I can't see the other ones, and it doesn't look very nice. So let's go to the content group and click on enable scroll. In general, what this does is it means that if the group is higher than the maximum height of the group, it's going to let you scroll that instead of just overflowing and cutting it off, clipping the content. So now we're going to add another visual component called add task. So if you don't remember how to do it, go back. But yeah, adding a visual component called add task. So we automatically go into that component. In there, we're going to add a text input node and a button. And then we're going to give it 20 pixels of padding on each side. And make it explicit width and content height. It's a bit weird developing stuff like this when you can't even see it, but you'll get the idea in a minute. If you are having real trouble with this, like I don't like developing things when I can't see them and you're really visual like me, then you can just add the add task element wherever you want on the page, just to keep it somewhere for the moment. Same as what we did with the task items. We're just putting them there so we can see what it looks like, right? So now we know what our add task component looks like. We can go back to it and carry on styling it, and we'll see all the changes appear here on the preview window. So we've got our group node, we've put a text node in and a button. We have made it into something with 20 pixels padding on each side. And we haven't set the border yet. So we're going to add a 1 pixel border in border styles. So we're going to choose the solid border style. We're going to make it a 1 pixel light gray border. We said that the gray 500 was our light gray. So let's do that. We're going to make the group also aligned to the bottom and have a sticky position. So now we'll get to see what it really looks like. We'll align it to the bottom and make it have a sticky position. Okay. That works. So now we need to have the text input styled. So we're going to untick enable label so we don't have this label above the text input. We're going to choose text area because we want to have it to be a bit bigger, not if the user types in it, they'll be able to go down to the next line instead of just having a single line input. We're going to choose 80 pixels height It's got a specific height. It's got a explicit width and height, and we've set the height to pixels instead of percentage. So we can actually set what specific height that's going to be. We could do the same for width if we wanted to, set it to pixels and make it have a specific width, but we're not going to do that right now. We're going to choose 80 pixels height and 8 pixels top padding. So that makes the text come down a little bit from the inside of the text input, which makes it look a bit prettier than it did before. We're going to make the text placeholder. We're going to turn that into task description. And then we're going to give the select button 8 pixels top margin. That brings the button a little bit down from where the group is. And we're going to change the label to add task. Nice. And then we're going to drag that component into the start page and add it to the bottom of its group as a child. So yeah, we actually added it to the wrong place. Oops. Should have been at the bottom of our lists. So we'll take this out so you can actually remove things from the tree. Drag it down, move around the canvas if you need to, and then make it not a child here of the list. We want to make it a child of the page. Oh my, look at that. It's all gone wrong. It's because my page is not long enough. There we go. So we've got our add task field, a bit of a divider between that and the list. We've got a bunch of list items that we can tick if we want to. It's looking pretty cool. So that is the end of the visual part of what we've been creating today. The next video I'm going to do is going to be adding some logic. How do we add data? How do we add the data to the back end? We're getting to the real meat of the issue. Right now it's just like a fancy Figma design, or a bit of an awkward Figma design. Next thing we're going to do is hooking it up to some real data. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.